Hello, dear friend, and welcome to another piece of this journey where my main item for this video is wanting to show you my process with working with all of this information. I think anytime we start into a new path, whether it's unpacking our gene keys chart or a human design chart or our natal charts, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the pieces. And that's another reason I'm really glad we're doing it this way, with all of the different videos being kind of one chunk at a time. But for example, this morning I was sitting here getting ready to do the evolution sphere, the video for that, and as I'm going along making this series, I'm actually using it as a way to continue to dig into my own series and my own chart, my own unique wiring. So how am I doing that? That's what I want to share. I'm sure there are as many different processes as there are people who study the gene keys, so by no means am I saying that this has to be your process, but just in case it's helpful, I do want to share. So I shared before, or maybe that's in a video you haven't seen yet, but I am teaching out of the 3 books that each book covers one of the sequences of the gene keys chart. So for example, this is the book for our genius, and it covers our activation sequence. We also have the book that is the love book, and it covers our Venus sequence, and you can tell by the dots that are colored up here which spheres are included in each of those sequences. And then last but not least, I have the prosperity book, and it covers the pearl sequence, which is the 3rd sequence that we're going to get to. And then I also have the big Gene Keys book. This sucker is like 800 pages, and it goes in depth on each individual gene key. It gives you like pages on the shadow of each gene key, the light frequency, the gift frequency it's called, and the city, which is the divine gift level frequency of each of these gene keys. And so again, how do you put all this together? So how I like to do it, so like this morning, for example, I'm preparing for the evolution sphere, and I already have my slides ready, but I did that like a week ago. So I'm wanting to refamiliarize myself and just take the process from my own gene keys and like relate to my own evolution before I try to deliver or teach anybody else about theirs or about the evolution sphere in general. Let me understand it even more deeply by trying to understand my unique evolution even more deeply. So the first thing I did was to read in like each different piece starts with its own chapter page. So here we know we're looking at the sphere of your evolution. And then as you get into it, it starts by having a very brief description of the evolution in general, but then gets right into the shadow. And so I read about the shadow of my gene key that is on my chart under evolution. It says 11.6. So that means I have gene key number 11 as my evolution. So then I go get in the big gene keys book, and I flip to gene key 11, and I find the chapter. I see where that starts. I also do something in my book, if I can get it. Such a trick to line it up. So like 325, 2022. That's the only other time I've ever read this gene key and like gone in depth. I also have the contemplations. So I've definitely studied the 11th gene key more than that. But as far as reading in this book, and I'm just filling in today's date, I'm adding that on there. Carly was here on 325 and 211. So I come back. I just read about the shadow of the evolution, and now I'm going to read about the shadow of my evolution, aka the shadow of gene key number 11. And so I go through this shadow, which is obscurity for gene key 11. I read those pages. I read through the repressive nature and the reactive nature that ends the shadow section of each gene key. And then I come back to the activation sequence book and I study the gift. So what does it say about the gift frequency of our evolution? It has a whole page about that. So I understand the gift frequency of our evolution. And then I come back to the Big Gene Keys book and read about the gift level frequency of Gene Key 11. So that's how I do it, is very piece by piece to try to match it up. So the equivalent for that, especially if you don't have the three little books, my videos are taught based on what's already in these 3 little books, plus I take it a little bit further with my own contemplations. And so as you watch the video, I'm going to describe the shadow level of your evolution or your life's work or your attraction or whatever bubble we're on. And after you hear me talk about this is what the shadow pattern of that sphere is all about, pause the video, go get the Big Gene Keys book or the audio contemplations, whichever you prefer, and listen or read about your specific shadow on that sphere. And take the time to do that rather than listening through the whole entire evolution sphere and then trying to go back. It's like you're listening to actually 3 different pieces of the conversation and then trying to get these, like the matching 3 pieces out of your unique gene key and put it all together at once. That's a lot. That's like a lot. I don't know how to do that. So I got to do it one piece at a time. So yeah, as much as you can break it up so that you're personalizing it as we're going through piece by piece by piece, you'll see, like, for example, I highlight in my books. I don't know if you think that's like awful or whatever, but I like to do it because these are the pieces that stand out to me, as far as like these statements like moved energy inside of me. Like they brought dots together that I had not connected before. They softened my perspective on certain pieces of myself and the world and life in general. I also sometimes will write notes in the margin if something like really, really prompts me. And then the last thing I do is like take these ideas and like kind of what stands out the most and then go get in my journal. So I got like a whole nother book where I can write in there like the shadow of obscurity and like what does that bring up in me? What does that move inside of me right now? That happens to be the shadow of the 11th gene key. That's the shadow of my evolution. So like what does that mean to me? And I personally believe that every single time we come back to our gene keys and we take it another step farther, either we go on to the next sphere and we contemplate that piece of ourselves, or possibly we made it all the way through the whole entire sequence, contemplating everything along the way and like having revelations all along the way. And we get back to the top and we go again. And the way it loops and deepens as we go is, it's truly delicious, and it's truly the birthplace of this series in general, because I wanted to not only contemplate for myself, but I wanted to have the element of like trying to turn around and teach it, because every time I sign up to teach something, I feel like I learn it that much deeper. So by teaching the gene keys through this program, I'm getting to deepen my own understanding of my own unique energy. And for that, for anyone following along on this journey with me, I am so, so grateful. So it is truly my pleasure, literally my pleasure, to get to share with you my process for working with this huge, vast amount of information. I hope you found it helpful. There is a link below to check out more about this program, including the other free previews that you can watch. And on the website, you'll find everything you need to gain access to the full series, if that's what you're drawn to. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, you take such good care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next piece.